Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com, with your host Jason Bougger.
Hey everybody, welcome aboard. I'm Jason. I've got our co-host Scott Michael Childers here.
Howdy!
Hello, Scott. Today we're going to discuss some different approaches to writing. What works for us, what doesn't work for us. So, Scott, what approach do you take when you start a new project?
Well, it depends on the project, to tell you the truth. If I'm writing my usual nonfiction or historical fiction, I'm pretty stuck to an outline because of the nature of those stories, especially a historical fiction where I'm trying to work a story around actual events. I can't tinker with the timing too much, so I have to hit my beats, and I need an outline to do that. Now, if I'm writing something else like science fiction, which I like to do, it's the palate cleanser for me, those I'm really writing as a discovery writer or seat of the pants writer. I'm really interested, mostly when I'm doing that, in the characters' responses. So I'm setting up a scenario and letting it go and following the characters as they go through. So I can use either method. I prefer discovery writing, but again, I like writing historical fiction, which kind of demands an outline, but when I'm just doing it for fun, I'm seat of the pants type of guy.
Yeah, I think you're right. Discovery writing is more fun.
Well, for us, there are many people. I remember I work with librarians, and they have catalogers, and they like cataloging and organizing. That's their deal. And so,
yeah, organizing is fun as well.
See, there you go. Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah. For me, when I first started writing, I didn't know what I was doing, and I read Stephen King's book, and he really takes a strong opinion against outlining. He says, I don't want to paraphrase, or I don't want to quote him out of context, but I swear he says, real writers don't use outlines or something along those lines. So I was strict discovery writer. I said, I like to set up a setting, throw some stuff at the characters, let the characters tell me how they get out of the story. That's still fun. It worked great for NaNoWriMo. It doesn't work so great when you have to clean up that mess, is what I feel like. So after several years of only writing discovery style, I did a little flip-flop, and I am finding it a lot more sustainable to my sanity to at least have a basic outline of what's going on and where the story's going.
Well, if I could interject here a bit, I think we've set up a false dichotomy here in our discussion early on.
Yes, we did.
Because really, it's not one or the other. You could fall somewhere along a spectrum between highly structured preliminary writing to very little structure in your preliminary writing. And so depending on what it is you're working on, your personal motivation, your personal interests, like we've said, Jason and I tend to be more interested in character and seeing how they deal with scenarios. However, if you have a very plot-based story, you're going to be focused more on the outline, so you hit your plot beats. So we don't want to lead people to think there are two tribes of writers.
Yeah, and with that in mind, some people might prefer a really detailed, say, take a 3-act structure and say this has to happen at this point, and then they'll write to that outline. Where others might have just a basic, I know I want the story to kind of wrap up this way, and I want these characters to go in this direction, and then I'll mostly discovery write till I get to that point and make sure this happens. I suppose that's how you'd say I write.
And I've done this myself. I discovery write a basic outline. When I'm writing, it sounds weird, but when I'm writing it out, I have the characters and scenario, but I'm leaving out big chunks of details, like describing the world, describing the color of their hair, even the dialogue, that gets left for later revisions. So what I'm writing is an outline, but I'm writing it as the characters are discovering it. So I think that'd be kind of like really middle of the two, where a lot of the detail happens after I have a rough idea of the plot, because that's where the characters took me. Sounds confusing when I say it out loud.
No, it sounds good. You're laying the foundation there. You're not writing a real strict outline to where you have to put this detail here, that detail there. You're still leaving it open-ended enough that you can enjoy writing and enjoy creating, but you know your boundaries. I'll use my second attempt at NaNoWriMo. I was left with 50,000 words that were a lot of fun writing. Now in the revision process, it's an absolute mess, and I'm going to have to start at the very beginning if I want to make this novel work at all. That's where I learned it's like I really have to have some idea of where I'm going, or it's a mess. Now, on the other side of that, I was on a panel with another writer who said he won't outline only because he feels like he's writing the story twice. So
Interesting.
You get all the fun, all the excitement out, and all the surprise out in your outline, and then you're going to write it again.
Yeah, I think, again, that's one of those individual choices that a writer will be making. Am I more interested in getting the first draft structurally, chronologically, whatever, in place, or am I more comfortable with revising what could be kind of a messy, really messy first draft when it comes to plot points and timing of the story? Again, you write your first draft, too, towards your strength as a revisionist. If you are more of a, I don't want my revision to be mostly plot point, then you're probably going to outline ahead.
Yeah.
Whereas me, I'll revise plot points. I don't mind that process as much, especially if I'm doing a science fiction tale or a genre fiction. Now, again, historical fiction, I have beats that have to be in place because that's what really happened. I can't generate new ones. So, well, I could, but I'm using a historical setting, so I have to hit some of those same beats. So I have to plot things out so that way the climaxes happen in appropriate times.
One problem I have also with going a real detailed outline to begin with is halfway through your novel, your character might do something that surprises you. And then you're like, well, so what do I do? Do I try to shape this character into line and say, no, the outline says you have to do this? Or do you throw out your outline and after the characters take over your novel? I kind of like it when the character takes over something I'm writing. It makes it a little more fun for me. But it can also throw you off if you know where things are going and you have to change that.
Well, how about, let me throw this question to you. Does the length of the piece make a difference for you when you're writing?
For me, it does. If I'm writing flash fiction, I've written a little bit of flash fiction. I probably have 3 or 4 flash fiction pieces published. And the way I write flash fiction is you have to know how it's going to end before you even start, because an important part of flash fiction is hitting that big boom at the end. So if you start a flash piece without knowing what that big boom at the end is going to be, you're going to end up writing something much longer as you figure out where it's going. So that's one place where I really am a strict outliner before I start. Short stories are kind of hit and miss. If I have a good ending scene in mind, I'll write to that end, but sometimes I'll start a short story not knowing where it's going to go and just create a world, create some characters, and see what happens. So what about you?
Here's the thing. As I've done more writing, I now rarely write to a certain word count. I write a piece and see where that takes me, and then edit it to length. There are some occasions where, I need to hit a certain word count. So, in those cases, I agree with flash fiction or short fiction. You don't have time for a lot of characterization, and it is about hitting beginning, middle, end, getting those bits, because words are premium, so that is what matters, as opposed to learning that the main character has a fondness for pistachio ice cream if it has nothing to do with the rest of the story. So if I'm just writing, I have an idea. I'm writing that, and then I'll see how long it is. But if I'm given a definite word count, I probably will outline that.
I also use outlining for revising after I'm finished. When I have a really messy short story that I just discovery wrote, and I'm not sure how tight its plot is, I'll read it and do a very detailed outline of its plot after it's finished, and it helps me find plot holes. Helps me make sure it's consistent.
So you have this general description of things, and then the outline comes, and then do you end up cutting out bits and pieces?
I'm talking after a first draft is done.
Okay.
I'll write an outline of the story after that to find problems with the plot, and that helps a lot, especially if it's a longer short story that I didn't put a lot of pre-writing into.
Well, the question probably comes up then, well, how do I know what I prefer? So,
Right.
Writers that may have only done discovery writing or only done outline writing, okay, so you've got that part done. Maybe, it sounds like both of us, we tried what we thought it was supposed to be, and then we adjusted according to what we thought were demands. Would you suggest that everyone at least try something on the other side of the spectrum at least once to see if it works for them? Or?
I would say for sure.
So would you suggest people concentrate on a certain length?
You know what I would say? I think yes. If you know you're going to write a flash piece, look up 3-act structure, and even a flash piece should have a 3-act structure, I think.
A beginning, a middle,
end. Yeah. The way I like to sum that up, create a character, throw him in a tree, throw rocks at him, get him down. But, have a basic plot there. And try making a real detailed outline of that, and then try writing based on that outline and see if you're happy with what you come up with. Or if you do a lot of pre-writing first, just try some free writing and see what you come up with there. You never have to stick with one style. And
well, it sounds like, depending on the genre and the length of the piece and your own comfort levels, I mean, this should not be a one or another for the rest of your life type of mentality. I know I have a certain style or a certain approach if I'm writing one type of story and another one for another one. And I feel comfortable with that. I get decent results out of that. But I wouldn't have known that unless I would have tried doing something that was a little outside what I was used to.
Yeah, same here. If I was trying to just discovery write everything I wrote, I think I would have a lot more short stories in my work in progress folder than I do now. I don't think I'd have as many finished short stories as I do. I did find the novel I'm planning to work on, I started with an outline, and I think it'll be a lot easier to work on revisions of that when it's done. I think having a little more detailed outline, I think some of these scenes are going to write themselves where I may have struggled with the plot. And I think with a novel, pre-writing is really important. But it's all preference. There are so many successful authors who will not do any pre-writing. Although I'll make the argument that you can tell. So many Stephen King books are so long, and it's like, come on, wrap it up.
Well, but in some of those, their approach may be more character-centric as opposed to hitting a plot point. I think both types of stories are good stories. It's just what are you expecting?
Yeah.
So.
And in the end, you have to do what works for you. And that's what everybody does.
Well, I think depending on where you get your lessons or inspiration for writing, you will hear different stories. This works for me. This is what you should do. But really, it comes down to what it is you're trying to accomplish in your writing and what you feel works for that. You could discovery write a historical fiction if you really wanted to try it, but I know it doesn't work for me. It might work for you. I tried that once. It did not work well.
It didn't work well.
But yeah, I think that's something that will come as you practice the craft. What do you think?
I think in the end, that's the most important thing is practice, and more practice. And try stuff out. And I think we'll wrap things up here.
All right. Apparently we discovery wrote this episode.
We did. Thanks for listening. Check us out on the web at www.writegoodbooks.com. See ya.
See ya.